What episode are we?
Episode 8.
Episode 8. Are we going to do anything special for episode 10?
Yeah, we should. I was thinking I should send patches to the 16 subscribers.
Oh, yeah.
uh,
All
something
right.
like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Decomp podcast. My name's Dr. Amanda Rowe.
And I'm Dr. Leon Higley, enjoying a cup. Where am I at here? A cup of cappuccino in my Shanes of Maine cup. Let me just take a moment to recommend Shanes of Maine. In the little village of Sanford, Maine, Shanes has just superb ice cream. But when you're there, I'm not saying they always have coffee. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I discovered. But while you're there, if you're a person who likes lobster rolls, they have great prices and good lobster rolls. So I'm told. I don't eat those, but I do eat their hot dogs and French fries before I have one of their gazillion flavors of ice cream. So let me highly recommend Shanes of Maine. And as long as I'm shamelessly plugging products, it
Yep.
sure seems like it would be nice to have somebody like, I don't know, Arrowhead Forensics sponsor our Little Viewed podcast. So, Amanda, I'm going to put you in charge of securing
Marketing.
Yeah, maybe if Arrowhead would sponsor us, we could get a little bit of uh, support for my new camera and stuff like that. And I don't know, maybe their advertising would get more views.
We'd have to talk about forensic stuff every time, though, probably.
Yeah, that's not a problem. We can always come up with something, can't we?
True.
So before we go in,
hold on. I'm Twinings of London tea today.
oh, what kind
My
of
normal
tea?
cup.
Oh,
Twinings. Yeah. English breakfast.
English breakfast tea. Got it.
Mm-hmm.
This is a strong, I made this cappuccino here, and this is a strong cup of cappuccino. So I won't fall asleep during the podcast. Before we get into, well, no, let's get right into it. Let's talk about ticks.
Let's talk about ticks. Yeah. Okay. So tick update infinity. First trial is done. So we finished up on Monday of this last week. Being in there on Sunday, where we recorded our last podcast episode, was actually helpful because it gave me some insight into procedures that needed to change that I would not have necessarily known just from talking with the student about it. So I was glad that the student had to work that day and I had to go in there. And the setup was torturous. And so as I was doing it, I was like, nope, this is not, we can't. So we are going back to straight Y tubes. I found some really nice glass ones on eBay where I find a surprising amount of scientific research paraphernalia. So, and yeah, they came really fast. Great customer service. They came in pairs. One was a little bit smaller, one was a little bit bigger. And I ordered 2 pairs and I only got 1 pair. And so I emailed them, sent them a message, and they like responded super fast and were like, oh yeah, we'll get the next one out to you. And I got it yesterday. So yeah, we're going back to straight Y tube. So just literal glass tubing in the shape of a Y. Scented odors come through one branch, control odors come through the other. They meet in the middle. So we'll put the tick in the bottom part of the Y and we start tomorrow.
Excellent. And were there any results or was everything confounded from the first trial?
It was all over the place. So we haven't looked at it statistically, but it looks just really erratic. So.
Okay. Well, yeah. I thought that might be the case, and I'm glad to hear that you've got new things, but I have a surprise for you today.
Ooh.
And for our viewers. So I upped, as you know, Amanda, I upped the technology here. So I've got a separate camera and I've got some things to show you on the separate camera. So
yes, let's do.
Yeah. So let's,
an exciting first on the Deaf and Decomp podcast.
That's right. So let me go to my Cruiser Fancy and we start with I think it's supposed to be a metal tray, but it looks wooden. It is wooden. We may want to.
Okay. Is this for our mortuary?
This is for our mortuary.
Yep. Yep.
And we've got 1,
Oh, embalming fluids?
2, 3. And then the last one, which is my favorite, danger formaldehyde. Like the embalming fluid isn't dangerous. And then
Cute.
you're going to have something to stick it in the body. So we've got
Mm-hmm.
some
Nice.
syringes. So that's waiting to go into
Embalming
the
syringes.
mortuary dollhouse.
Okay. I'm here for it.
And then this is not as big a surprise, but the awesome, incredibly
Yay!
awesome
First
body.
body. Why
So
why does that poor person look like just a little bit perturbed? I mean, I guess they are dead and they just did have an autopsy, but what's with the eyebrows?
uh, that's just their eyebrows. Okay,
Okay.
Amanda, I'm going to put you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is incorrect. And I think you and I can fix it, but I wondered if you know why I believe that this autopsy doll is incorrect.
Uh, well, there's been no dissection of the skull or neck.
Okay, so that's it. All the autopsies I've been to, they started with the skull and removed the brain.
But it is a beautiful Y incision. So
Well, we could paint a little incision around the skull, right? And
we could. Yep.
they could have put the skull cap back on, so
Yep.
it's eminently fixable.
Yeah, because if they're doing an autopsy pre-funeral, they'll go in like they'll make the cuts on the back so that they can fold everything forward, look, and then fold everything back. So
But we should still see a line here at the sides, right?
on the sides, yeah.
In the back. So
Yep, for the back. Did you look
that's
on the back?
freaky. That
Are there any scars?
that's a freaky weird part of an autopsy, watching them pull that skull off.
Yeah. What's going on with the toes? Move it down just a little bit. I saw there was
Oh.
is there a toe tag?
See if I can get my
Oh, there is.
there is a toe tag. And look, the wheels rotate.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much.
Yeah. It
And so
wasn't
that's a real metal thing, yes?
yeah, that
Yep, okay.
they crafted. So it wasn't cheap, but you get what you pay for. So
Yeah, no, I think that's beautiful.
yeah, I think it's really incredible model. Oh, what do we say? Museum quality.
That's right. Museum quality. It's just, yeah, the eyebrows. I mean, maybe that's just, left over from.
They were suffering. If you
They
look at
were.
that face, they were suffering before they died. I don't think it
Yeah.
was a natural. I don't think it was a natural death.
Well, obviously not.
So
Yeah. Beautiful.
just done so well.
It is. All right. I'm stoked.
Yeah. So I need to get those. Well, I guess we need to get the autopsy. We think about
We need
doing
to
the
get the
actual.
room. Yeah. I have an idea. So we'll have to meet and talk about it.
Excellent.
Well, those were great show and tells.
Yeah. Well, I also have someplace around here a Dexter action figure. So not Dexter's Laboratory, the other one, the serial killer.
Based on a book in Miami, that Dexter.
That's the one.
Hmm. I did my blood stain pattern analysis training with the person that the author based Dexter off of. Not the murdering part, the blood stain expertise part.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool. That's
Yeah.
super cool. Talk to us a little bit about that. Let me interview you about bloodstain pattern analysis.
Let's talk about it. Ask me a question.
What are you not allowed to call it?
Huh? You
What
mean
are the
splatter?
spots? Well, you're not allowed to call the spots.
Splatter versus spatter?
Yeah,
Yes. Bugs splatter on windshields. Blood spatters on surfaces.
that distinction cracks me up because it seems so trivial.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. But you know, use the language you're given. So
So as you did that, was there a lot of trigonometry involved, or how?
some, yeah, and actually later on, was I when was that class? Can't remember if I was still a PhD student. I must have been when I took the math and physics of bloodstain patterns down at the beautiful Johnson County, Kansas crime lab. That was the first and only physics class I've ever had.
That
I
doesn't
made
speak. It doesn't speak well to the University of Wyoming, but okay.
I somehow made it through high school, undergrad, and 2 rounds of grad school without ever having to take a physics class.
Phyllis pulled the same trick, so you're in good company.
Yeah. I also never had to take the GRE.
What?
No. Entomology department at UNL didn't require it when I applied. So I was like, well, I'm not going to spend the money if I don't have to. So I never took it.
The GRE saved my butt. I got a really good GRE score uh, to help make up for my abysmal undergraduate grades.
I had a high ACT score to get into undergrad. And then I don't know, my grades were good enough that, yeah, I never had to take the GRE or physics. So I did not have, like, when I have students ask me about grad school, just in general, I'm like, yeah, I can give you advice, but I don't think I had like a typical grad school experience. So
So when you took the class, was that a hindrance or was it okay?
it was okay. It was hard. It was hard, but it was hard for everybody. So it wasn't just me. It was a lot of math. Up until then, though, it was just very basic trig, and it was like, you know, plug and chug. You didn't have to figure out anything on your own. But knowing sort of the theoretical math behind it, that's what that math and physics class was like. And so there was a lot of like theoretical, this is why XYZ, and it was a lot. But
Now, I'm curious about distinguishing the different types of spatter and whether it's cast off or whether they're drops. And can you just walk me through what the different, how you distinguish different types of
yeah,
blood
so
droplets?
most of it comes down to edging, like what do the edges of the drop looks like? If they're smoother, if it's more round and smooth around the edges, then it was most likely a passive drop or dropping straight down at 90 degrees. If if the edges are jagged or irregular and or there's a tail, then it's coming off something at an angle, and or the smaller the size drops, the more force was behind them. Not always, but generally. So it's just they used to talk about impact spatter in terms of velocity, like low, medium, high velocity. So like a gunshot would be considered high velocity. And they've done away with those because they were subjective. There wasn't really anything to measure them against. And now it's just impact spatter, where you have force going into a pool of blood to cause the droplets to form versus um, projected patterns where the force is behind the blood. So like arterial spurt would be projected where the force is pushing the blood out of something, whereas impact is you have a pool of blood and then you're hitting it with something.
Can you distinguish between blood that's been, I don't know what the right term is, exhaled, not aspirated, whatever the opposite is of aspirated blood? When somebody's coughing up blood, can you distinguish that from other
Yeah,
types of droplets?
because it has air bubbles in it.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So the part of it is the droplet analysis, and then the whole lines and going back and that is all that real, the stuff we see on TV?
The idea behind it is real. Yeah. So looking for what's called area of convergence and area of origin. Area of convergence is 2D space, like coming back into an area where you have a general idea of where the droplets came from, and then the area of origin would be 3D space because human beings are 3D. So there's blood. Even if you, so let's say that you have somebody being beat to death, and they're being beat on the head. The head is a 3D object, and so even though the object that's hitting the head might be coming down in the same spot because of the three-dimensional aspect of the head, you're going to have blood coming off in different ways on different surfaces. So the area of origin is where blood comes from in a 3D space. So it's not going to be like a tiny spot. It's going to be more of an area, which is where the name comes from.
And do they try to reconstruct events based on where the patterns are?
They do. Yeah.
So there's a temporal aspect to it as well then?
Yeah. Yeah. The example that I give in class is like if you have a bloodletting event and then there's keys on top of the blood and then there's more blood on top of the keys, you know that there was blood and then keys were dropped and then another bloodletting event. So you can look at it temporally that way, or you can start where there's no blood and then a trail of blood and then see what's at the end of the trail, and you can sort of piece things together that way based on the spatter or drag marks or whatever.
And this business of cast marks on weapons, cast blood from swinging weapons and so forth, are those spots any different, or is it more contextual that you have to determine what happened?
Contextual. Cast off is hard because it looks like impact spatter, and it's not always clear. So if you have a bat and you hit once and swing it back, there's not going to be any blood yet because you broke skin that first hit. When you bring it down the second or third time, there's now blood on the bat, and when you swing it back again, it can cast off blood onto ceilings or walls. But if if there's a lot of cast off or if there's a lot of bloodletting events in general, it can be, it doesn't always go on this nice, smooth single line where you can differentiate between the blows. So it's more contextual for cast off.
So I would be remiss not to ask you questions about your master's work where you were distinguishing marks when insects were feeding on the droplets. What's the best way to do that now, Amanda?
Oh, geez. I don't know what they're up to at the moment. There was quite a bit of work done after my master's work. And the last paper I read did not have like use this to determine if it's an insect stain or not. But I'd have to read the paper again.
Well, how about summarizing what you found during your master's work? Because you had ways to distinguish.
Well, sort of, yeah. So when flies, other insects will show up at crime scenes too, but when flies show up at crime scenes, they'll oftentimes feed on the blood as a source of protein. So blowflies in particular have these sponging mouth parts, so they're sponging up the blood, and so it was really cool seeing them just completely obliterate stains. I mean, it would take a lot of flies to, clear up a whole blood stain, but they could very easily erase entire sections of a blood stain in an area just with their little sponging mouth parts. And then they have this behavior called bubbling where they regurgitate what they just ate and they hang it off of their mouth parts to try to evaporate water off. And because of surface tension, if that bubble drops too far down and touches the surface, then disattaches from the mouth parts and it adheres to the surface. So that's one way that insects can leave blood insect stains behind, is through that bubbling behavior. And then the other way is once it passes through their digestive system, they defecate where they were eating. And so then you have these stains that are usually different colors. Like you can usually tell that it's not blood based on the color because they'll be brown or tan. Sometimes they're clear. They will have tails, which can be misleading when you're looking at directionality. And both the regurgitated blood and the defecated blood will presumptively test positive when you use tests. So presumptive test at a crime scene is just where you test something thinking it could be something, and if it comes back positive, then you send to the lab for a confirmatory test where they can do better chemical analyses. So at crime scenes, they use things like phenolphthalein that turn pink. I think everybody's probably seen that on like crime shows, but they also use, hemosticks were originally made to test for blood and urine. Like you dip it in, it turns like a dark green. Leucocrystal violet turns purple. And so both regurgitated and defecated blood stains, insect stains, test positive on presumptive tests. So that was the problem, was that you would go to a crime scene, have some bloodletting event, and then you would find what looked like bloodstains maybe in another room or in a different pattern somewhere that didn't match what the other stains were telling you what would happen. You'd test them, they would come back positive for blood, and it would just sort of could potentially make a mess of your ideas of what happened. So
I remember speaking with a CSI from St. Louis at a workshop I was involved with, and she talked about having that experience in multiple scenes where they at that time when they were working, they didn't realize they were insects. So it was educational when she talked about that. What about the UV light business? How does that work?
So I did do some testing with different alternate light sources to see if there was any sort of reaction, because other bodily fluids will react with alternate light. So if you've seen like urine glowing under black light and that sort of thing, blood generally doesn't. It just comes back as black normally. So I was just messing around, and this is one of those like science stories where you just got lucky, like you were just sort of messing around. And I was playing with different wavelengths of light, and I happened to catch out of the corner of my eye something glowing, and I turned the light towards it, and I was at 465 nanometers, so sort of blue, pretty solidly in blue, I guess, with an orange filter. So I remember I was wearing these orange goggles, and they were the same goggle filters that you would use for fluorescein, which is another blood enhancing chemical that you can use at crime scenes. And some, not all, but some of the defecatory stains, so the poop stains, were glowing under that light. And I don't know why, like I didn't look into it any further. I finished that research and then I started my PhD. So
do I remember correctly that a lot of those things react with nitrogenous compounds? So it could be something nitrogenous in the waste.
Yep, and that's what we hypothesized, was like uric acid or something was reacting. But yeah,
Very cool.
I didn't do much further. And people have taken it much further as far as like documenting insect stains and dividing them up based on shape and size and color. So there's been quite a lot of work done with it since.
Which labs did that work? Do you remember?
Not off the top of my head.
But North American or European?
North American. Okay. Yeah, East Coast.
East Coast. Okay, cool.
Huh.
Well, the other topic I thought maybe we could touch on today in honor of the morgue victim was to share some of our autopsy experience.
Okay. I just did a lot of talking, so you can go now.
Well, I don't know. How many autopsies have you been at? I think I've been at 4 or 5, not a lot.
Mm, I've been to more than that, but like less than 20,
That's an
less than
impressive number.
15 maybe.
So the things that impressed me, if I can just give my general comments that you can react to, like I said, it was weird seeing part of the face come off when they were
Mhm.
peeling down the skull, and
Yeah.
the dura and those layers getting out the brain were kind of fascinating. I've seen um, I think two of the autopsies, maybe three of the autopsies, there were subdural hematomas, so
Oh.
that membrane was there, and it was so easy to see. I mean, it's just a massive pool of congealed blood
Hmm.
there in the brain, so there was no problem at all seeing it.
Hmm.
So that I thought was remarkable. And then for the general autopsy thing, among the things that impressed me were we really smell inside and not in a good way. And and I'm not talking about the digestive system, which is a
Right.
whole nother level
No,
of terrible odor. I'm talking about just what the inside
the
smell like.
smell of like blood and muscle and yeah, I know what you mean.
It makes me wonder about surgeons, if in some of these like open heart surgeries and so forth, they have a fan on, or does the mask help, because it's not smelling great inside there at all.
No, no, it's not. I My first couple autopsies, I was surprised, I guess, because well, I don't know, I just didn't have any experience with it. There were parts that were fairly tedious, where you're like taking samples and you're getting those samples preserved and you're recording, verbally recording notes or having someone record for you as you're making observations. And I guess I didn't realize, but I think that's probably true of most things, how much note taking and record keeping there is involved in a single autopsy.
I think it differs to some degree by pathologists, but I'm going to make the observation that the good pathologists record like crazy, and
Mm-hmm.
will have multiple photographs of everything, and multiple, maybe they're making auditory notes that get transcribed or whatever. But yeah, that impressed me. Um, the I saw some weird autopsies. I saw some. Oh, I think I saw. I don't think I'm. This is a false memory. I know that there was a second autopsy from a body that was exhumed that had the bag of organs in the chest. So that was freaky, weird, sort of, you
It's like,
know, opening the chest, and then here's a
yeah.
plastic bag full of organs all ready for your delivery, sir.
Hmm.
That was
How long had they been buried?
less than a year. I want to
Oh.
say it was a matter of some months, maybe 6 months. The other thing that was interesting, so I had seen people who drowned and strangled, and I could easily see the burst capillaries, the petechia,
Hmm.
with the naked eye. That was so easy to see.
Yep.
That surprised me. The other thing that surprised me in a bad way was how how you can see bruising from the inside, the pools of blood.
Yeah. Or like how it looked, yeah, when you take the skin off, like seeing what it looks like in the muscles and seeing what it
Right.
looks like in the organs. Yeah.
It
It,
looks so terrible. You think, but I've been bruised like this. Is that what my muscles look like? And
yeah. I I saw one of my I think this was maybe the second autopsy I ever went to, was a motorcycle fatality, and the abdominal aorta had been severed, and so the entire abdomen was full of blood, and it was, they're aspirating it out, they're sucking all of it out so they can see if there was anything else that had gotten nicked or cut or was damaged. And I just remember thinking like, that's it, that's all, that's it. Like, it human bodies seem to be so fragile.
oh my God,
And I'm like, how are there any of us?
I had that same reaction, Amanda, over and over. I like the the subdural hematoma. You're telling me that little pool of blood killed this person?
Hmm.
That one little pool of blood that we could just
Yeah,
suck out? What
yeah.
that's what killed them? But
And the
having
later was like just a tiny nick, just like they had to look really hard to even find where it was in the abdomen. And yeah, that had was at a turn at an intersection, went to turn, car came, hit the brakes, skidded the bike stopped, the body didn't, and then like hit another car. Like the body hit another car. Didn't get run over, but slammed up against another car. And that motion was enough to like, I don't know, a bone broke and nicked it or something. I can't remember. I just remember the abdomen being full of blood and me thinking like I'm never one getting on another motorcycle again, and two, like that's it.
yeah,
Felt sick.
yeah. Yeah, I think that going to autopsies would be a cure for a lot of motorcycle riders when you see how fragile things are. Now,
Yeah.
I've seen the reverse as well. I was surprised at how much anatomical variation there is
Mm-hmm.
among people. That shocked me. And with some of the victims, and mine were all homicides that I've been to, um, I couldn't get over how bad some of the organs looked. There was I recall one where the person was alcoholic and had cirrhosis of the liver, and it didn't look to me like there was any normal liver
Mm-hmm.
tissue. I didn't understand how the liver was even functional. And I remember asking the pathologist, Dr. Okoye, and he said, "Oh, there's probably 5 or 10%. It was going to kill them, but that's not what
Yeah.
did it at that time."
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's a
I'd
strange
seen, I,
thing.
yeah, I've seen the same things with really weird looking kidneys. That
Oh, I don't remember most of. Did I have most of my autopsies have been like accidental, natural, or suicide.
really,
And but the suicide ones were not messy ones. They were like strangulation ones.
how bizarre, because and literally all of mine are homicides,
Oh
and
wow.
and I'm trying to think. Two of them were infants or 1 year olds, which
Ugh.
I thought would bother me. Didn't bother me at all. Still doesn't.
No,
I
the kid ones bother me a little bit.
In the abstract it bothers me, but actually being there, and it was the same with the. Well, I said that they're tissue to me. They're not people, so
Yeah,
I have no problem. And that sounds very trite, doesn't it? But it turns out that's actually the way apparently I think, because I've not had any. Um, I didn't have any problems. I've had problems about crimes and what
yeah.
happened bothering me greatly, but not the autopsy.
I can say that while I'm there, it is very much tissue. Like it's very much a scientific endeavor. And then after the fact is like when you have time to um like think about it, I guess, or to resociate what's so you can like
Yeah,
dissociate while you're there, but then uh stop and think about it is when the kid ones do bother me sometimes. I've never been to a child autopsy, but like some of the child cases have bothered me after I've worked them up.
yeah. I think it's that sometimes you never think that the person deserved it, but you can see people who are living lives that were likely to come to a violent end.
Mm-hmm.
But that's never the case with the children.
No, I, it's funny that we're talking about this today because in lab on Tuesday, before we got started, my afternoon lab, one of my students was like, "Hey, Dr. Rowe, what do you do when you're not doing this?" And I was like, well, I do, like, this is my job. And she's like, "No, but you said something else." And I was like, "Oh, do you mean like the forensic science stuff?" She's like, "Yeah." And so I was getting a bunch of questions, and we talked about it for like 15 minutes before we actually started lab. And one of the questions they asked me was like, have you had any cases that have like stuck with you or bothered you? And I was like, no, not so much that. Just, you get to see the worst of people, like the worst of what people do to other people, which is awful. But also, when you're working these cases and you're just, and I don't want to like generalize, but we do see patterns, right? We see like patterns of behavior, patterns of choices, patterns of drug use and that sort of thing. And I looked at my students and I was like, here's what I can tell you. Choose your partners wisely. Choose your partners wisely because, in the child cases that we've worked, it's always the mom's boyfriend or the step parent, or, it's like, it's never been a stranger in the cases that we've worked. And uh, in a lot of the other cases, same thing, right? Like the violence was brought to their house because of a partner, usually because of drugs and like drugs and money. But
I was going to say, I think 80% of my cases were drug related.
yeah, I think mine are more money related that are
Okay.
not necessarily related to drugs, but more like this: I needed money and this person didn't give me money, so I killed them, sort of thing. But yeah, same. Like quite a few of them have been drug cases.
Well,
Drug.
this is a topic I think we should spend some more time on in another session. And I'm checking our time. I think we're just about to the end anyway. At least I know my coffee's gone. I don't know where you're
It's
at
almost.
with your.
I'm about right here.
Okay, well, I'm fully caffeinated, but have nothing more to share. So yeah, so maybe next time we can pick this up. I'll talk about the case that had five possible causes of death and a single autopsy.
Oh my
That
gosh.
that was impressive. That's a case that sticks with me for the point you just made. Seeing what people can do to other people, that's so unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the autopsy was sort of unbelievable. And then when later on, when I learned the details of the case, it became even more unbelievable on top of what had already happened. So that's a case that's worth talking about. So maybe that's
I have a case of a burned body I could talk about. I wasn't at the autopsy, but I worked up the case after the fact. And
okay.
burned bodies are weird, so we can talk about that.
All right. Well, that'll be our topics for next time. Until
Okay,
then, our cups are empty or nearly
that's
so.
right.
Fire's getting
Hit like and subscribe.
hit. Oh yeah, hit like and
Oh,
subscribe.
also for our 10th episode, let us know if there's anything you guys want us to talk about
Yeah, I
or any
think
questions.
those of you who are subscribers may be getting a little gift in the mail. If that is, if I actually have your addresses. So I guess if you're watching this and would like a little surprise at our 10th episode, send
Podcast swag.
send you might be getting some Death and Decomp swag
That's
coming your
right.
way. So
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Okay.
great talking to you, Amanda.
Bye.
Bye.